What if you could sit down once a week with a colleague who's a flat-out warrior? This colleague wasn't a stud in dental school. He struggled. He returned to practice in his hometown, an area once labeled by USA Today as the second worst place to live economically in the United States. And this very same colleague went on to establish an historically successful general practice known worldwide. What if you knew someone that wanted to take you by the hand and show you everything you need to know, from treatment planning to leadership, to maximizing your journey in dentistry, or just life? You ready to be inspired? Welcome to the Lionhearted. Hi everyone, Dr. Steve Rasner back here on the Lionhearted Dental Podcast. Welcome back. I figured something out about myself since I last saw you, and that is, I don't care anymore how many people listen or don't. I don't have a goal anymore of being a top 10 or whatever the numbers are of a podcaster, or whether I get a bunch of people like I do right now, because I appreciate it, in the UK that tune in, and it switches. Sometimes it goes over to Canada. Of course, the United States is always a heavy listener. I do this honestly. I figured it out. If one of you tuned in one time and I gave you something that helped you have a better career or even a better month, that's good enough. I'm in this game for no other reason. And so I have something to talk to you about this week that may surprise some of you. And that thing is that I sold to a DSO last December. I did. And you know what? When I made that move, privately, I felt like I know this is bizarre, that I betrayed a lot of people who listened to me in live audiences and things I wrote over the years. And I did. That's really how I felt. And I also do not have to air my laundry just because I do a podcast on exactly what's going on with my life when it's going on. And now that I have a year under my belt, I actually think I'm in a better position than ever to help or assist some of you that care about my opinion. I do, because the absolute truth is I know a tremendous more about that space in our industry than I used to. And I know I'm the guy that went out there for years and preached anti-DSO philosophy. And I'm still that guy. I'm pretty much against most of it because I think it's hurt our industry. Just like dental insurance has hurt our industry. It's really how I feel. What I didn't know is that certain DSOs, like people, have different personalities. Like some of them want to completely take you, grind you up, spit you out, and make as much profit out of buying you and what you put together as they can. Others are completely hands-off. And of course, that's who I ended up associating with. And it's not going to really be that who I went with and all that kind of stuff. You can talk to me privately about. The concept really is what do I feel now that I've had a year of this? And the truth is absolutely mixed. And I'm going to be honest with you, going forward, it's not going to be the focus of every podcast, and those of you that are in a position in your careers where you may think about that kind of a thing, I can certainly give you my truths and what I've discovered. I have no other reason to talk to you about it. And so it affected me. I first have to say this, because I can be snarky. And I feel it coming on in this podcast. And I have to be respectful to the organization I was acquired by, because they have done many, many fine things. They have. But just the act. And listen, let me say something else that's really important. Listen, dentists, we're all different, right? Some of my colleagues out there bought amazing stocks. Either you got good advice 25 years ago and you bought Apple, or Boeing, or whatever has completely changed. I have a patient that is a cop that has 115,000 shares of Apple. He bought Apple 20 some years ago. I don't know the exact thing. And he was with it for every split they had. Can you imagine? 115,000 shares. And I'm sure there's many of you like that. Or maybe you bought a strip mall in the 90s or whatever, and you did something. Well, guess what? A lot of us did not. I didn't. And my biggest asset was my practice, without a doubt. It's one thing I built pretty much from the ground that nobody can take credit for. And so it was important for me in my world. I don't know what I would have done had I amassed this fortune otherwise, which many of my brilliant colleagues have done, and many of us haven't. So the point I want to make to start with is they're not all the same. And there's some, honestly, very decent DSOs out there that give you an opportunity to acquire assets and that you never would have had the chance to. Because let me just talk to you. The old school way of doing things, the way I grew up in this industry, is that you establish this practice. And as you got towards a place in your career, maybe your late 50s or 60s, whatever, you would bring in a young guy that would be an associate. And maybe that process took a while and you had to try out several of them because he was going to be the person or female that took over for you. And then you'd work out a deal and you would sell your practice for 70 cents to $1.10 on the dollar over a period of years. Well, that is very different than what's going out there in the last 10 years with DSOs. It's given a lot of people, including myself, an opportunity to capitalize on long, long years of hard work. And I'm not here justifying it because there are a lot of things I don't like. And I'm going to share a couple of them with you because they relate, in my opinion, to what always made me successful, because I've stopped doing some of them because I've had to. And some of them I didn't have to stop. So one is, and this is shocking to me. Look, you've heard me say on the podcast, how bad you want it. That's the phrase I use. I use it in my lectures too. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want success? I mean it. You know, when I stop and think about it, and it's amazing because I had this conversation this morning with this gentleman from England. And I was trying to explain to him who I thought I was in the space of dentistry. He's a person that works for a company that I hire that helps me with promoting my awareness in the industry. And he's new to this space, this person I was speaking to. And what I found out, and I didn't plan this talk with him. And as I was speaking to him, I was saying things like the following. I said, and it relates to what I just said to you about how bad you want it. I said, most dentists, not all of us, some dentists go through dental school and their goal right, is research. Not many of us, but that's some. Some are perfectly content with you looking at dentistry as just a vehicle to a job and being an associate of a practice for their careers. Just like they would have joined General Electric or another company, Verizon. They're just dentists, though, who don't even think that's an odd thing. They have a skill and they join a company. I'm very often, by the way, it's a DSO today that they join. There's many that I've met and know that, I mean, I would find that completely peculiar given what my DNA is growing up and as I evolved in the practice. I would never have thought ever in my 20s or 30s as I got out of dental school, oh gosh, I can't wait to get out so I can join this DSO or that DSO. That is my dream. But there are a lot of us that do that, and it's fine. If that makes you fulfilled, then okay. I don't think that's who listens to this podcast, by the way. And you know what? Email me if I'm wrong on that. I would love it. I would love to speak to some of you that do listen to me, that your life goal or your life direction probably is going to be with working for someone else. Like I said, I'm not being snarky yet. That's fine. And some of us get out. Thank God bless you. And you're involved in public medicine, public health. But am I wrong? I don't think I'm wrong. That for most of us, it's an incredible dream to go to a school and develop a skill called oral health care, dentistry, and then take that and go to a community somewhere in the world and develop an organization based around your skill set that is yours. It's yours. Everything about it's yours. And that people come to you from far away. I mean, I know I'm not the only practice, but I'm in southern New Jersey. Okay, I'm 2 hours from New York City, 1 hour from Philadelphia. And I have people on a weekly basis. I'm not bragging here. It inspires me. And I know it inspires a lot of you because you have the same. On a weekly, this week that just went by, I had a guy from Arizona. I had a guy that drove 4 hours from Virginia. And they're not the only examples of that. And I had somebody from New York. And there's a lot of dentists between southern New Jersey and those places. And yet, and look, after a while, I know, regrettably, we take sometimes those things for granted. But it is an incredible thing. Whether you have a tiny little practice, it doesn't matter. And you did exactly what I just said. You built this thing in your community, whether you're in the UK, Germany, Poland, Mexico, Brazil, Australia, all the places that listen to me, India. And people choose to come to you for two things: the skill set that you've acquired. It is an incredible thing, is it not, my friends? It really is. I just did 2 veneers for free, by the way, on this kid I play tennis with who doesn't have a lot of money or any money. This really nice looking boy that I played tennis with for the last 4 years. That's how I only know him from the tennis court because he's one of dozens of when I play tennis, we do these drills led by a coach who I'm very fond of. And the drills are mixed between adults like myself, and I'm the worst one, by the way, by far. Honest to God. And I'm right next to these kids that are they're number ones in their high school. You know what? If number one means you're the best player and you play lead singles, and it's really a joyful part of my free time, the very little free time I have in my life. And I noticed this kid over the years didn't have the greatest front two teeth. It's not really a kid. And he had no other choice, in my opinion. So I did veneers on. I did him. He's 17 or 18. It's a kid. I take it back. And I had him in 3 times. I had to do a custom shade. I used Valley Dental Lab out in Stillwater. I didn't use like a discounted lab because I was doing them for free. And he is such a changed. He was already a beautiful kid. I'm serious, he's a good-looking boy. But those front 2 teeth killed a smile. And when you have a skill, and when you see, right, guys? When you see somebody smile that you did, not in the operatory, but you happen to see them for whatever reason outside of your office, or if they're even at the front desk at your office, and your eyes see what you created, you can't lie about that in your gut. You either think that's really special and natural and unbelievably attractive looking, or not. And I've had both. I've had cases I thought were better. And I've had cases where I had to look for the margins in the chair. That's how good they were. That I didn't know. I didn't know. Because I have a lot of patients, and I forgot that I did veneers or whatever on the patient's anterior. And I know you guys can relate to that. As I'm even talking to you about this right this moment on a Friday afternoon, I actually feel endorphins and feel happy in my memories about all of these things. And that was my point. How bad do you want that? The price for me can never have been enough. I would have done anything to create that, to create a skill set that people covet is a beautiful thing. I'm sure it's beautiful in every industry. And the only way to create that is a relentless commitment. Sorry to steal the phrase from Vince Lombardi, the great coach of the Green Bay Packers, but a relentless commitment to excellence. And I mean relentless. And to me, that's worth it. That's worth everything I've done and everything you're doing right now. And on top of that, then you build this thing, this organization, this culture. We don't all have the same culture. That for many of us actually exacerbates the skill. It makes the fact that you're skillful even better because you put amazing energy into hiring the people around you. I know I did. So a lot of people get complimented on a weekly basis in my office and in your office. Well, the hygienist was amazing. It's the best experience I've ever had. Hearing a patient say that. Or people saying, I hope you guys know who you are. Now, I don't get that enough. And I know you do not either. But my point is what's the price of that for you? What's that worth? And so I was telling this young man from England that my story, as many of you already know, was that I didn't graduate in the top of my class. Quite the contrary. And I had to battle back. And part of the battle was just so many angles coming at me. Some of it self-inflicted, Some of it just bad luck. I mean, my town used to be great when I grew up, and it went south. Really went south the year I returned in 1980, meaning that a major plant, a major employer closed down. I mean, a major one. We're talking like 15% of the community, which, believe you me, trickles down to a great portion of the rest of the community, and it never recovered. It didn't. And you know what? When you can't pay your mortgage, your oral health care can go on the back burner. And as it did for many people, and still has. And so I was explaining to him that I created, and I didn't know I was going to create anything. I mean, my journey simply was I wanted to be better than I was, like many of you. And when I was on my journey, that was all about C. Do you know that when I started dentistry in 1980, of course, there was no internet. So I literally researched. I don't even remember how I did it. I would find the best guy on occlusion. There was a guy in Chicago. I'm sorry, this is 40 years ago. Harold something. And, people talk, and there's this guy in Chicago, and there was a guy up in Boston who did Ted Williams' teeth. And, it was harder to find. CE was not an established, by the way, I realize I'm off topic because I began this with this monumental announcement that I sold a year ago. And I want to get back to that before this is over, which I'm already into it pretty far. I guess somehow I need for you to look back in the mirror. What are you fighting for? Because this is hard, man. And back in 1980 it was even harder because it is so easy to become great at something. When I say that, I mean endo, ortho, aesthetics, surgery, everything today than it was 40 years ago. And I would find guys by asking questions just in my own state of New Jersey. I remember it. I remember it half the time they never would call me back. Hey, I'm Dr. Steve Rasner. I'm a new dentist in Cumberland County, New Jersey. I heard some great things about your office. Or anyway, I could just hang out one afternoon and I won't bother you or something. And maybe I was talking to an office manager. Maybe I was talking to the actual dentist. It's true. And actually, if you want to know how I began my actual speaking career, there is a story there as well. And I was coming back from a Frank Spear course. And at that time in my life, I was reading every magazine about dentistry that existed. And there was a guy named Earl Eastep in Texas. And I would make it my business to find these guys. So at this point, I was now into the 90s. And CE had indeed started, or I wouldn't be at a Frank Spear, John Coy's course, which I know many, many, many of you are doing, by the way. And I applaud you. And I'm so behind you and encouraged by your desire for excellence. I mean this. I'm not going to go into the story. I'll come back to it another time. Long story short is I just told you I wasn't going to tell you it. I called the guy up and he actually answered the phone. Earl Eastep answered the phone. And he had written this magazine that went out monthly called The Blueprints for Success. And I loved the way he spoke and talked. And it was a Monday morning because I was coming back from Seattle. And I said, is there any way I could come out and see you? He said, well, call me boy. I said, well, boy, if you want to come see me, it's going to have to be tomorrow because I'm going to Scotland for 3 months to golf. He was like in his late 60s. I canceled some patients, worked on Monday and Tuesday, took 2 different flights to Texas. One flight to Dallas and another flight to God knows where. Stayed in a godforsaken hotel, about to meet a guy that I only know that he wrote a magazine on a month, every other month. In fact, I remember thinking, I know this is going to end badly for me. I'm telling you, I remember being frightened, driving my rental car, looking around thinking, I could easily vanish here and nobody would ever even know what happened to me. But I did things like that. And by the way, I spent a whole day with this guy. And he wrote some very, very powerful things positive about me. I didn't even know why I was there, other than I asked him to go there and I asked him about his career and what did he do and how did he get there. I mean, that's what I did until CE became a thing. And you know what that happened with that guy? I didn't hear from him for 3 months, 4 months. I forgot I went there. And one day I get a call at my office that Earl E. steps on the phone. And he says, listen, I hope you don't mind. I took the real Southern guy. By the way, like 6'9" on the Final Four NCAA basketball team for Oklahoma. And he was frightening looking. And a gem. I don't even know if you're around anymore, Earl, but don't misconstrue my admiration and appreciation for you. Because he wrote some very nice things about me in a magazine that went out to 10,000 dentists 6 times a year. And in one of those issues, he wrote some things, and I started getting speaking engagements. And that's the truth. That's how my career started, as a speaker and an influencer, if that's what I am. And I guess you just don't know where the what the outcomes are from incredible energy that you put into something. But to me, that's what most dentists want. I'm getting back to just developing. I don't care if it's just a small boutique practice in Austin, Texas, Helena, Montana, Anchorage, Alaska, whatever the cities are over the world that you're proud of, that you walk into on Monday and you know those patients want to be there, that they actually feel, I don't know what the word is, honored that they get to go to you, that you took them, because they know how into it you are. Man, that's worth fighting for, to me. Not that being in public health isn't, or research, thank God you guys do that, but that's the dream. And if I could have that dream amongst the obstacles I had, not including, not discounting the fact I couldn't even get a GPR. I didn't. And all the other things that we have to overcome, and there's many that I can't even get into right now. Like when you think about it, and you think about how insurance, and I was explaining to this chap in England about, imagine that this is what you want, but the obstacles include, I said to him, how would you like it if I paid you 65% and not what you're charging me? And by the way, that's what all your other clients did as well. And you pretty much felt you had to take it. When I said that, he bursted out laughing at me. But isn't that somewhat true? You know what else I told him? Which I want to drive into next week with you. And this, I'll leave you at this. And I want you to really think about this, because it's what troubles me about our profession. At the height of my speaking, when companies would be interested in speakers like me, and I never really had a lot of sponsors because, let's be honest, I don't always follow. I say things that I'm not going to say things because you want me to say them. And you can imagine me being hired by a company and trying to walk the line of a company, and that just would probably not go well unless I believed in everything this company stood for. And one of the big sponsored type of companies out there did in fact come to me, and they wanted to set up all these lectures, which did not happen much in my career. I pretty much got hired by individual organizations, Alabama, Arizona, AGDs all over the place, big conventions. But this company wanted to hire me for like 10 lectures, and I said, that's just fabulous. Let's call it Getting Out of Insurance, the fee-for-service model. And I'm talking a big company, by the way. I believe they were based in California. They said, we can't call it that. I said, why not? It's just because nobody will attend, because nobody will believe it. Nobody will believe that you can actually wipe out insurance and have a fee-for-service practice and ignore the insurance industry. And I didn't get to deal with them, and I'm glad I didn't. And that's a true story. And that disturbs me about, they didn't even hesitate. They said, we can't base it around that. Why don't you tell us how you do your composites, or how you do this, or how do you do that? And I said, because it's much more important for my colleagues to understand that there's alternative roads in dentistry, and one does not have to be an insurance-driven road. Listen, I am very aware that I should call this podcast Several Subjects. I'm very aware, I'm looking back over my notes, that I started this by telling you about the DSO, and I wanted to tell you the good and the bad, and I can continue to do that, and I'm going to, because it's too important. Let me just tell you the one bad that comes to mind. And it's really not their fault, but it's a consequence of it. One of the bads is that when your employees that you have right now don't work necessarily for you, but now they're employees of the big brother that bought you, they're not as respectful to your wishes. I found myself 2 times this week, after 42 years, where my patient was my dental assistant for suctioning. Now, why would I do that? How about somebody calling out like every day? I can't tell you that I went 42 years. I can tell you. And people calling out in my office was not a thing. If they called out, they were sick. Forget COVID for the year that it rained. When a lot of us got sick. I'm talking to you about a 41-year period of time. People, because I had those conversations with them in the very, very beginning at the interview. This isn't the kind of place you call out because you have a runny nose or you have a little bit of a headache. Staff that are listening to me right now, you don't like that? Don't apply in my office. But you lose that because there's all kinds of corporate systems and policies you have to go through to be politically correct if you don't like the way something's running in your office with staff. And look, I know I come on and act like this sometimes when I talk about team and staff. I make sure my team is paid better than anybody by far that has that kind of job anywhere near our location if they've earned that. And over the years, I've always been lucky to have people know that was my philosophy. And so we never had trouble attracting staff. And we don't work Fridays, and we don't work evenings or Saturdays, of course. And all these other benefits. So it was never an issue. And in exchange, yeah, I want people who don't call out because I really could use a day off. That's not in my handbook. So it's rampant now. And I've declared war on I'm going to handle it my way. Now, if the company is listening to this, I guess you're going to have to talk to me. Because my way works. And my way's not tough. When somebody calls out, I have a discussion. If they call out on a Monday, or they were there the night before and they were totally fine. And if I have a suspicion that if you're ill, you're ill. Okay, I get it. Can we just be honest? Not everybody that calls out is ill. Sometimes it's a Monday morning. That's what's ill. Listen, I have a lot more I'm going to say about this. I have a lot to tell you about a lot of things regarding about the differences and how it impacts you. And I really mean it. There's some very good things for my colleagues out there who are in that space. But there's some things that have affirmed how I did things for 42 years that worked, that aren't working as well when I don't have total control. Hope this resonated with you guys. I really appreciate you. I'll see you next week on the Lionhearted.